Alright, welcome back to another video on cut rate history. Today we have an actual video for like the first time ever. We're getting there. I'm using the jankiest of camera mounts, and I'm filming this on an iPhone, so if it looks crappy or sounds crappy, we're just testing the waters here. So give us a little grace. We're doing our best. Anyways, today I wanted to talk about the state of 1911s in the year of our Lord 2026. Because it's a little weird. Things that have been the norm for a long time are no longer the norm. And I've touched on this a little bit in the previous 1911 videos. However, I wanted to delve deeper into that today. It's been talked about a lot. One channel in particular that does a very good job at this is Old Path Traveler on social media. I think his YouTube page is just called Traveler. He does a lot of 1911 content, and he was a huge inspiration for me also doing 1911 content. So huge shout over there. Really appreciate him. He's got a solid take on a lot of stuff. So I encourage you to go check them out. Now, 1911s have been around for well over 100 years. They've been on the civilian market for well over 100 years. And their quality in the past, I would say probably 30 years, is dicey. Forever, Colt dominated this market, and rightfully so. There's a lot of other companies out there who did make a solid 1911. There's a lot of custom shops nowadays that make a really good 1911. Alchemy is the first one to come to mind. Bull Armory, guys like that. But they're really high end. Those are $25, $35, $5,000 guns. Nighthawk is up there too. And you shouldn't have to pay that kind of money to get a quality 1911. And my biggest gripe right now, if you have been to the channel before, you know it is Colt. I want to love Colt so bad, and they just continue to suck. If you're new to the channel, you don't know, I've been in the firearms industry for a long time. And when I was working in a gun store as a regular old salesman, I remember picking up and, toying with, feeling out the Colts we had in the case, new production Colts. Governments all the way to, national matches, all that stuff. And they didn't feel good. So this gun is a Remington Rand parts kit build, essentially. If you saw that video, you know exactly what it is. But I would pick up a Colt, and their grip safety wouldn't be very positive. Sometimes they would either be really loose, not positive, no discernible clicks. It was just really mushy. And other times it would be very, very tight, be very hard to disengage or re-engage, that kind of thing. There was no happy medium. Some of Colt's guns also come with a plastic mainspring housing, which I also really didn't like. And a lot of times they're the flat spring that helps disengage the grip safety was very loose. You could tap it and it would bounce. You could hear it bounce, and it was just disheartening. There were several times that we would get new Colts in and we would have to send them back. The iron sights were off or broken, or, something was out of QC to the point where, we had an in-house armorer, and where a combination of, why would we fix their problems, but also, we don't want to waste time sending it back. But also, we shouldn't have to do that for a Colt, And the more I dug into it, it turns out Colt hasn't been great probably since the 90s, at least reliably so. They had a lot of problems. I was really hoping when CZ took over, those QC issues were going to get cleaned up, because CZ, as much as we meme on them and make fun of guys who run CZs or things like that, they make a great gun. Their QC is typically pretty great. So I was hoping when they took over, those things were going to get fixed, but they're not. And this can really be seen in what this gun here is trying to emulate, the M45A1, the Colt railgun that the Marines purchased in 2012 that was supposed to replace, these kinds of guns, and then the Kimber version, things like that. Reportedly, those things weren't great. They were cracking slides, they were cracking frames. The finish that was originally put on them would wear off, and then it would wear off kind of in like dusty flakes, and then mix with the lubricant that was on the gun and turn into this like mush that would gum the guns up. They would stop running. That eventually got resolved, but I mean, these were only in service technically from 2012 to 2016, and then they were retired. We all know that a lot of guys kept on to them longer than that, but in official spheres for MUSOC and MARSOC, it was only in service for 4 years, and that's a shame. Now, for the civilian market, you have a lot of 1911 options right now, and some of them are great, most of them are mediocre, and some of them are bad. I don't think Colt makes a bad gun today, a bad 1911. However, for the price you're paying, a regular government model Colt is going to run you about $1,000. And for $1,000, I better not have to tune anything on that frickin' gun. You know what I mean? I shouldn't have to pay $1,000 for a Colt and then take it home and retune the mainspring. And, I shouldn't have to do anything. I should take it out of the box and it should feel and function just fine. Now, a huge contender right now is Springfield. Springfield makes a great gun, a great 1911. I won't speak to their polymer Croatian stuff, but they make a great 1911. And for the money, it's a solid gun. I've never had to send, while working in a gun store, I never had to send a Springfield back. And they normally seem tight. The grip safeties are always very positive. The manual safety is already very positive. The grip safeties are always strong. They're a good gun. But same thing, for, the base operator, you're going to pay $1,000. They make the Garrisons and the mil specs, and those are a little bit less than that. And those are nice guns too, but to me, the Garrison is probably the best bang for your buck from Springfield. But like the mil spec is supposed to be emulating something like this, and it misses the mark in a couple of places. I understand they gave it, improved sights, because a lot of people really don't like GI sights because, they're tiny and hard to use. A lot of people don't like them. So they gave them enlarged sights, things like that. But if I'm going to go and buy that type of 1911, I want it to be authentic. I don't want those types of little bitty upgrades. So there's that. And they're forged frames and they're forged slides, and I don't believe they use MIM parts. Don't quote me on that, but I think all of their stuff is forged. And they make a solid gun. Your other option for something like this is Auto Ordnance. Auto Ordnance also makes a great gun, and their clones are fairly authentic. However, you're going to pay, it's been a little while, but probably $700 or $800, which isn't terrible. I mean, you're getting a good gun, but they do use MIM parts. They're, the forged slide, forged frame, but the internals, some of them are MIM. Which, does that really matter? No, I guess not. But what I'm really getting at here is it does matter when you can go out and buy a TSOS ASF for $500, MSRP, and on sale regularly for far less than that, and they don't have any MIM parts at all. That's when it does matter, because given the choice, obviously I'll always take all forged parts. So TSOS, that's what most of these guns are, because honestly, they're the best bang for your buck on the market right now. At least in my eyes, for the things that I do, they're just so affordable at such high quality. Also, I want to throw it out there, I am not sponsored by TSOS or SDS or Mac or anything like that. But they're just such high quality guns, such high QC. The quality of parts are just so impressive for the price point. It's hard not to go with that. There are other options. This gun is mostly a Cimarron import, which they have their firearms made by Rock Island, or Arms Corps, I should say, in the Philippines. And Arms Corps guns are fine. They're serviceable, especially for the civilian market. I don't know if I'd want one as a duty gun. However, they do run. They're just a little bit odd. So if you watched my video on this, cut rate World War I clone, you know that it is a cast frame, which I'm not huge on, and the parts aren't GI Colt John Browning spec. They're a little bit off in weird ways. Some parts are like oddly large, some parts are oddly small. Like this is a Colt trigger and it has wiggle room. Yes, I'm gonna fix that, but in theory, you should be able to drop it in, maybe file it down a little bit, and you shouldn't have any movement. Which, case in point, this is a TSOS duty. This is a Wilson Combat trigger. I dropped this baby in, no fitting at all, and it doesn't move. I didn't have to do actually anything to this. So, yes, do 1911 parts a lot of the time need a little bit of fitting? Absolutely. A little bit of tuning if you're going to be putting, a bunch of parts bin parts into a 1911. Yes, I understand that. However, there shouldn't be this much play. But we're going to fix that. Other options. Charles Daly is out there. I'm not a huge fan of those either. I've shot a couple of them. I worked with Palmetto State Armory for a little while. They sold like crazy because they're super cheap. They offer them in what I think are the most cliche and gross finishings. They're very cheaply like case hardened, and people see that and they go crazy for them, and then they see it's only $300 and they go, oh my god, I gotta have it. Again, most of the time they run. Would I bet my life on one? No, absolutely not. I couldn't bet. I wouldn't carry one for self-defense. I definitely wouldn't carry one in a duty capacity. Not that really anybody's carrying a 1911 duty capacity anymore, but just something I wanted to throw out there. I want Colt to come back. And there are examples between, the 90s and now of Colt doing really cool, high-quality things. If you go and watch Old Path Traveler's video on his World War I reproductions from Colt, he has a lot of good things to say. But, they were limited runs, and they did still have a couple of problems. He did have to tune a couple of things on those guns. And for what they're going for now, which is all of $1,500, if not more, you shouldn't have to do that. A TSOS out of the box is ready to go. So the Raider, which is what their M45A1 clone, this was my first one. This was my entry into TSOS. It was several years ago now, probably almost 5, maybe not quite. Doesn't matter. Anyways, I was really hot and bothered for a Colt M45A1. Those new from the Colt Custom Shop are $2,500. No freaking way could I afford that at the time. I was a very broke college kid. And you know, the issue ones or the contract overruns are way more than that. So you know, at the time it was a pipe dream, and then I think it was Grand Thumb had posted a picture of one of these on his Instagram, and I was like, you know, oh my God, what is that? You know, that's, if you don't have them side by side, it looks like a perfect clone. It's not. You know, things are different. It's a little bit of the wrong color. It has, you know, this style of grip, but it's not quite this color or pattern. But it's very, very close. It gives you the feel, the vibe. So I said, oh my God, you know, so I texted a gun shop that I was friendly with, and I said, hey, can you get me one of these? And they did, and I think it was like $600 at the time. And I took it out to the range, and I have shot the crap out of this gun. And I don't think I have, other than crappy magazines that I got from a gun show, I don't think the gun itself has ever malfunctioned. They're fantastic. And I shot it in competition. I shot it at Steel Challenge, things like that. And it's been great. My second entry into TSOS was when I did the Remington Rand parts kit build, essentially. And that was the first time I had ever mixed two companies' parts together into one build. And I was worried that I was going to have to, you know, fit because this is the TSOS barrel. I have the original barrel and all that stuff, but I didn't want to put it in a gun I was going to shoot. I was worried I was going to have to fit the barrel. I was worried I was going to have to fit it to the frame. You know, I was very inexperienced at the time. You know, people say, especially Fuds, you know, you got to fit 1911s, blah, 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 blah. So I was worried. But all of my Remington Rand parts dropped onto the ASF frame, which, if I can get some good lighting here, maybe, sort of right there. You can see, you know, it has the correct markings. Do they look perfect? No. But they're close enough. And all of those parts just dropped right on. And this is a great shooter. Again, I don't think I've ever had a malfunction with this gun. Definitely shot this one far less. And so between those two, I was sold on TSOS. And then having the M45A1, I was like, well, it'd be cool to do some other MUSOC builds. So I did this one, and it's not quite done, but the TSOS, just regular 45 duty, is very close to what I think is like the V4, what the collector circles call the V4 M45. You know, I did Packmeyer grips, I did a new trigger, I did a new hammer. You know, I could put a mainspring housing on here that had the lanyard ring, things like that. But again, for me, it was close enough. It had the look, it had the feel, it had the vibe. Loved it. Again, runs flawless, provided you have good magazines. And then Mac came out with their actual MUSOC M45 clone, also correct markings, which is cool. And this one is great. This one looks basically just like the one Alchemy does. And the Alchemy one is, you know, $3,000+, who knows. And this one was $600, I think, maybe $7. Again, for the price, you're just getting such a good gun. It's hard to argue with anything else. It's hard to argue for anything else. I should mention that TSOS and Mac Military Armament Corporation, they're essentially the same company. They're both imported by SDS. They're from the same, it's the same company, basically. Um, yeah, so just a quick overview of the guns I have used, what the ones I have experience with, and where 1911s are right now, really. Like I said, I want to love Colt so much. One of the top guns on my want list right now is their Royal Blue. There aren't a lot of companies out. I don't know of any. And if you do know, please throw it in the comments. But I don't know of any companies making a blued 1911, like a high polish, or even, a standard, like a commercial style bluing on a 1911 for an affordable price. Yes, I know Alchemy does it. I know a lot of those high-end people do it. Charles Daly kind of does it, but again, those are weird, oddly out of spec guns, and they're mostly like also engraved or case hardened, and I think that's gross. Rumor has it TSOS is going to be bringing something like that to the market. I've heard a couple of different things. I've heard they're going to be doing, like a pre-war or interwar style 1911. I've heard they're going to bring one that's blued. They do make a high polished chrome one, so I wouldn't be surprised if they did blue. If they did one of those, I'd pick it up immediately. But if you know anything that I don't, please let me know in the comments. And yeah, just a quick little 1911 rant today. And give me some feedback on the video. Do you like it? How's the audio? And if you made it this long, I appreciate you. And I'll catch you in the next one.